Okay, now to finish up our introduction of the characters, we have Euthyphro. Who is Euthyphro? Obviously, he's somebody that knows Socrates. If you look at the beginning, Socrates says hello to him. They're very friendly, somebody that he knows. And as we go on, we're going to see Euthyphro is somebody, a very religious man, somebody who thinks he knows a lot about the gods, and we're going to see he's going to be saying a lot about the gods further on. In fact, you might see after you hear what's going on, you might get a different impression. So he's a very, very religiously pious man, religiously observant man. And so that's where the dialogue begins. The two meet up and they're talking about it. They're on their way to court, or Euthyphro's on his way to court regarding an indictment, and so is Socrates. Socrates is answering charges, and Euthyphro is going to, we'll see, he's going to be pressing charges. So now let's talk a little bit about Euthyphro's indictment, which starts at 3E in our... And one thing I should mention is that Socrates is being friendly with Euthyphro's, and Euthyphro understanding that Socrates has been indicted. He says to Euthyphro, maybe you can give me a hand. I'm really new to this game. I haven't been around. I mean, the guy was about 70 years old at the time, and he hadn't been to court, so that's why Euthyphro was pretty surprised to see him there to begin with, and he has to answer an indictment. So he said, maybe I can learn something from you, because that was kind of Socrates, and it's a characteristic of Socrates. He's going around asking people because, and we'll talk a little bit more, he didn't think that he knew anything, and he wanted to learn from other people's wisdom, but he just didn't accept things because somebody said it. And then he's asking him, okay, what's your case? What is your case, Euthyphro? Are you a defendant or prosecutor? So Euthyphro tells him he's prosecuting, and he says that people think I'm nuts to prosecute. So now we understand he's pretty religious, but maybe Euthyphro's a little bit on the extreme side. We're seeing already, Excuse me. So, who is Euthyphro indicting? Who is he prosecuting? His father. Why is he prosecuting his father? Even though everybody thinks it's crazy, what did his father do? Well, a little further on the next page in our volume, he tells the story that they were out in farming in a place called Naxos, which is an island southeast of Athens, and they were out working their fields on that island, and he had a servant. That is, the victim was a servant. Why is the victim a servant? Well, we'll talk in a minute after we see Socrates' reaction. But the victim, the guy who got killed, is a servant. Now, how did this guy get killed? Well, one of the farmhands killed a household servant. So think about it this way: the farmhand guys, they call them servants, slaves. Sometimes maybe they were just employees, and this could be the Greek idiom. We're not worried about slavery here. We're talking about the murder. So the question is, who was murdered and on what basis? Well, there was a farmhand who murdered some guy that worked in a house. Let's say the butler. So the farmhand murders the butler. Okay. And what happens? Euthyphro's father ties up the murderer, puts him in a ditch, and sends somebody out to the religious authorities to find out what he should be doing with him. That is what Euthyphro's father should be doing with the murderer. In the meantime, he really didn't take much care of the murderer, and through exposure, maybe lack of food, etc., from his maybe from being bound up, tied up, the murderer dies. And now Euthyphro is here indicting his father for killing the field hand. Pretty weird set of circumstances. I mean, That is, the father didn't go out, didn't intend to kill the guy, didn't try to kill it. And keep in mind, as I mentioned in class, let's not think of it in the context of, 21st century New York City. I mean, they didn't have quite the police force that we have here. They didn't have the same judicial system. It was not quite as formal as we have it today. So Euthyphro finds his father's actions absolutely wrong, and he goes to indict his father. And at least he could see the circumstances and assume the circumstances of the other guy's death is a little questionable. I mean, if your father had been defending himself from attack and killed somebody, you certainly, you'd think the guy was really nuts to prosecute him for murder in that case. In this case, he didn't kind of treat the prisoner all that well. But remember, it's not like New York City. We don't have like the Brooklyn House of Detention where the police come and they lock somebody up until he's indicted. I mean, they were off on an island, far away from civilization, kind of the normal civilization, farming. There is certainly a very complicated situation, but nonetheless, Euthyphro is indicting his father. What's your reaction to Euthyphro's indictment? Do you guys think this is a little bit wacky? Now, we ask you to write something on this, to write your initial reaction, because I think it's important. And if you haven't done so, stop now. But my initial reaction is, whoa, wait a second. I mean, it would be one thing for, the family of the field hand to prosecute Euthyphro's father. And in fact, maybe you think Euthyphro would want to be a witness for the defense of his father in his trial. But it's not their relatives that are prosecuting. It's Euthyphro himself prosecuting his father. It is a little wacky